Hey, Dad, let me know how you feel.
I think I'm an excellent father.
Good?
I think that it's my greatest quality.
Yeah.
My kids are top notch. Well, I have an older daughter. I have a 25-year-old daughter. I have a 6-year-old granddaughter. I have a 13-year-old daughter and then a 10-year-old son.
Joey Galasso is a loving dad.
There you go.
A professional, and an athlete. He works hard to live a healthy, successful life.
You've seen my business, you've seen my activity life, now you see my home, you see I kind of got things together.
A world away
I'm not perfect.
from his run-ins with the law.
My whole system was different back then. When you get incarcerated and when you go to prison, the first thing they strip you of is your dignity. They break you down mentally, emotionally.
Joey was convicted of robbery back in the late 90s.
I made some bad choices with my friends.
He spent nearly 3 years in a Florida prison.
It corrected me. It made me twice the man who I was before.
Now, after years of being on the right track, leaving his past behind, there's one constant reminder of this Floridian's time in prison. He can't vote. And he isn't the only one.
Florida's felony disenfranchisement law has a particularly shameful history.
We're talking roughly 10% of citizens in Florida.
This system's been broken for a long time.
There's no denying that the system is broken.
There are very few guidelines.
There's absolutely no standards.
It is a very subjective process.
We can make any decisions we want. I deny restoration of civil rights. I deny restoration of civil rights. I'm going to deny restoration of civil rights.
Nationwide, more than 6 million convicted felons have lost their right to vote, but a quarter of all felons without this right in America live right here in the Sunshine State. Florida is one of only 4 states that strips felons of their right to vote for life, and the only way for them to get them back is to go through a long,
I left there in December of 2000.
Now, 18 years later.
Yep. Ta-da.
and complicated clemency process.
Having to come here and go through that is hard, very hard.
Florida felons must first wait up to 7 years after they've served their time before they can even apply. A new application joins thousands of others in a growing stack of cases waiting for investigators to review them. Next, the applicant gets a letter saying if they've been granted their voting rights, denied, or chosen to appear before Florida Governor Rick Scott, the State Attorney General, Agricultural Commissioner, and Chief Financial Officer to decide their fate.
The way that works is if I'm unfavorable, then it's over. If I am favorable, then 2 of the other 3 applicants have to be favorable or it doesn't get approved.
Some, like Deborah Myers of Tampa, leave the state capitol victorious.
I will have my say. I will put my number on that, my little mark on that ballot, and it will be my turn.
But most felons are turned away, leaving them unable to vote and as voiceless as they were before.
I commend you for turning your life around, but at this point, I'm not ready to grant you restoration of civil rights.
A WUFT News investigation revealed Governor Rick Scott's administration denied 60% of cases on the spot. And after sifting through more than 2 decades of data, we uncovered an alarming trend. In the late 90s, Governor Lawton Chiles gave voting rights back to about 1,300 felons each year. From 1999 to 2007, Governor Jeb Bush restored voting rights to about 9,300 Florida felons per year. Those numbers more than quadrupled under Governor Charlie Crist, giving more Florida felons their voting rights back than ever before. On average, 39,000 per year from 2007 to 2010.
During the 4 years I was governor, over 155,000 Floridians had their rights automatically restored and therefore got the right to vote.
Those numbers fell drastically during Governor Scott's administration, from tens of thousands of Florida felons regaining their right to vote under Crist to just a few hundred. On average, Scott restores voting rights for 384 Florida felons a year.
I think it's important that
We figure out if you're going to become a productive member of society again.
But across each administration, one thing didn't change. African Americans disproportionately silenced because of their felony convictions and a law dating back to the Jim Crow era.
Florida's felony disenfranchisement law has a particularly shameful history. The legislature of that time redefined a number of crimes in terms of their severity and what sort of punishments attached to them. So that took very specific crimes that were associated with people who were newly freed, effectively disenfranchising everybody that the 15th Amendment of the Constitution had re-enfranchised.
After reviewing numbers from the Sentencing Project and the U.S. Census Bureau, we were able to find the lingering effects today. About 8.5% of Florida adults who aren't African American can't cast a ballot, but more than double that percentage of the Sunshine State's African American adults don't have the right to vote.
A very big segment of Florida's population doesn't have the sort of history of participating politically because they were prohibited from doing so by law. Most people in this country, the first time they step into a ballot box is because a parent or a guardian took them. And if you have entire communities where the adults are unable to vote, they raise children who cannot vote.
And someone like Greg James can't help but feel singled out.
You have to rethink that whole concept, that whole ideal about, yeah, I want you to have restoration, but I really don't want you to have your rights to vote back. Why are you afraid of me having the right to exercise my voice?
Coming up on Silenced, a movement to give voices back. How Amendment 4 could bring historic change to Florida.
We just verified enough signatures, put the voting restoration amendment on the ballot.
After years of advocating for second chances and trying to restore Florida felons' right to vote.
And today, the state confirmed that they did get enough signatures to get a constitutional amendment on the November ballot.
A historic movement in Florida is underway.
This is a modernizing effort toward the criminal justice system, trying to bring Florida more in the mainstream of where the country is.
Amendment 4 would restore the voting rights of Floridians with felony convictions after they complete all terms of their sentence, including parole or probation, except for sex offenders and murderers. And it would single-handedly extend voting rights to more people simultaneously than at any other point in America since 1971.
We are certifying the 26th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States.
That allowed 18-year-olds to vote for the first time almost 50 years ago, meaning Florida voters have a chance to make history this November.
We're talking roughly 10% of citizens in Florida who would be eligible to vote who are currently not on the rolls. So that's pretty dramatic.
If 60% of Floridians say yes at the ballot box, that means 1.5 million people could once again vote, this time in the 2020 presidential election. That's more potential new votes in one election than the number of ballots that decided the last 7 presidential elections in Florida combined.
Florida is always important. We've known that since the 2000 presidential election.
Stand by. CNN right now is moving our earlier declaration of Florida back to the too close to call column.
The national results that year hinged on just 537 votes in Florida, a state that's historically been a deciding factor in presidential elections.
Florida, at the end of the day, is going to end up being the most important state here.
A study published in the American Sociological Association looked at 8 presidential elections and found 73% of all incarcerated felons in the United States would have voted for the Democratic candidate.
The statewide difference in the popular vote in the last presidential election was only 112,000 votes. That's why this is a political issue. It's enough new votes to change the outcome statewide.
But looking toward the future, there's still a lot of ifs.
The passage of it, getting these individuals engaged and registered to vote, getting them mobilized to the polls are all not just natural occurrences.
That study estimated only 1 of every 3 Florida felons would actually show up to the polls. And that brings up another big if. If Amendment 4 passes, it could come at a cost. A report from the Florida Division of Elections says it could add more costs to state agencies and circuit courts because of more people registering to vote. But it could reduce costs to the Executive Clemency Board, which currently spends more than 92,000 hours a year reviewing clemency cases. The state can't say by how much either side will be impacted, only that it predicts the costs will outweigh any savings, and that they will have a better guess after the amendment would roll out officially on January 8, 2019. But Desmond's heart is set on progress of any kind, and with $14 million raised and more than 840,000 signatures of support, he's already imagining what 2019 could bring.
There's nothing that speaks more to citizenship than being able to vote.
Next, on Silenced.
The judge didn't sentence you to a life of fighting.
The road to automatic restoration continues, but voices around the state are also speaking out against the amendment.
I don't think it should be automatic.
From Jacksonville to Miami, conversations are taking place on doorsteps and over cell phones.
This is Julia, and I'm calling for the Alachua County Labor Council.
Our records show that you were sent a ballot for this upcoming election.
We're urging you to vote for Amendment 4.
The movement in Florida to restore felons' voting rights is in full swing.
We're going in every community, right? Talking to all kinds of folks from all walks of life, from all political persuasions, right? Getting them energized about Amendment 4.
A vote is more than just a ballot. Many Florida felons consider it a voice.
Because I can't vote, so I'm kind of blacklisted.
1.5 million plus people whose voices have been silenced.
Not being able to vote is telling me that I don't have a voice.
One they haven't had for a long time.
Amendment 4 is about redemption and forgiveness. It's about telling members of our community that we are willing to give you a second chance. It will restore to our community many people who are already there, who are living and working and paying taxes amongst us, but yet are silenced.
But there's still some opposition to the issue. Not everyone thinks this state amendment is the solution.
I think the amendment goes a little farther than I would. I don't think it should be automatic.
Florida's Amendment 4 would not apply to those convicted of murder or sexual offenses, but the new process would also disregard many other factors the current administration looks at.
So we look at a variety of things, their domestic violence history, if they've been involved in mortgage fraud, if they're career felons, things like that.
Which is why the only thing that makes sense is to do voting rights restoration on a case-by-case basis where people can ask those questions.
Though opposed to the amendment itself, Floridians for a Sensible Voting Rights Policy Executive Director Richard Harrison and State Senator Dennis Baxley still feel something needs to change.
First-time convicted felon, nonviolent crime, that person should have the easiest path to restoration.
I think there should be a meaningful path that if you're showing that you've reformed and rehabilitated your life, that should be much easier to get accomplished.
Even though their solutions aren't explicitly on the ballot, the next governor is. And if Amendment 4 doesn't hit the 60% threshold needed to pass, the future of Florida felons' voting rights lies in their hands.
We have amended rules of executive clemency for our consideration.
Just as Governor Scott took over the clemency process from his predecessor, the new governor will have the power to change Florida's clemency process. WUFT News spoke with Democratic gubernatorial candidate Andrew Gillum at an event in Palatka.
Yes on 4.
Where supporters seemed ready to pass the amendment. In an interview afterwards, he agreed.
I hope that Amendment 4 passes, and I hope it passes overwhelmingly to bring Florida into the 21st century. We're only one of 4 states that still have this kind of restrictive policy, and it is extremely harmful.
WUFT News tried to talk to the Republican nominee, Congressman Ron DeSantis, at multiple events. And despite his campaign inviting WUFT News to a campaign stop in the Villages, this is how our final attempt for an interview ended.
He didn't have time to shake hands, but if we ask him one quick question.
He's not gonna. I've tried my best, but he's not gonna stop me.
He still would not speak to our reporters. However, his campaign told us in an email that Ron believes in second chances. However, he believes that automatic restoration is inappropriate as recidivism is still very high. But if the polls are right, neither candidate will have the chance to shape how most Florida felons get their voting rights back. The most recent data from the University of North Florida Public Opinion Research Lab shows 71% of likely voters support the amendment, with only 21% opposed and another 8% undecided. Still, some are doubtful it'll reach the 60% threshold.
That's a very high bar, especially in a state like Florida, which is politically divided and divided in a lot of other ways.
But the poll shows that even when broken down by party lines, there's enough support on each side of the aisle for the amendment to pass, meaning Florida's felons may no longer be silenced.
To be able to finally have my voice heard, to be able to walk into a booth and feel like a citizen again, you know, it would be so emotional.
I'm praying that it gets approved because that it would open the doors for so many people.
I think that deep down in all of us, there's a belief in second chances and forgiveness.
I would imagine one of two things in my life. I'm able to vote again. The first would be that I would be just like I am now, tearful, so excited that I wouldn't have words for it. And then the second way I imagine myself is going with my whole family and everyone cheering.
Now, the votes of people like Manning, Meade, Volz, and 1.5 million other felons rest with Florida voters on November 6th. Next on Silenced, the conversation on Amendment 4 continues. Voters come together to discuss what restoring felons' rights would mean to them.
Florida voters have a big decision to make on November 6th as they decide whether or not to restore felons' voting rights in our state. We've assembled a panel of North Central Florida voters. They are Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, all willing to openly share their thoughts on Florida's Amendment 4. Like you, they just watched WUFT's Silenced, 1.5 million Florida felons without a vote for the very first time. Let's jump right in and talk to our voters. Thank you so much for watching this special, for coming in with us. So after seeing this special, is there anything that surprised you guys about the restoration process or about Amendment 4? Anything that maybe you didn't know before? Can we start off with you?
One of the things that you learn in this documentary is how emotional the issue is to people. And I think that it's necessary that when you're going in to amend a state constitution, you do take into consideration the emotion that's involved in this issue, but it's important to look at the facts, like the change in the amounts of people.
I would have liked for it to be pushed harder, that this is a people-initiated initiative. The only reason that it's on the ballot is because the people said so.
It's not a political issue in my mind. This is a human issue. This is an issue about fairness, about forgiveness, about redemption.
The documentary mentioned that 73% or so of convicted felons would side with the Democrats. It just makes you wonder why one side would be opposed to doing this compared to the other.
I didn't know that there was like a overseeing committee on such a.
That was interesting.
I didn't know that at all. It's like the rulers of your fate.
The whole documentary was very enlightening, and I think, like Carter said, I really wasn't sure what the whole process was like. And this panel, I never really did like a panel of people that giving you your rights. I think it should just be, if you achieve these particular levels or you achieve this over a certain amount of time, then you do deserve your rights back with certain types of crimes. Because the other types of crimes, it's a big judgment flaw, character flaw, and I know there is redemption and all of that. But to try and figure out which ones have and which ones haven't is the privilege of voting that's really very important, to just go ahead and blanket out to everybody.
Their right to vote is just that. It's a human right.
I think that one of the things that were in the documentary was that there's still Jim Crow laws that, or something like that. Talk about a failure of elected officials, if that's ever one. I mean, give me a break. When we're deciding, hey, we're making an amendment to the Constitution, that's a big thing. And if we're using something like a right, then I want to establish what we think a right is, because then if we're caveating it, say we're denying rights, that can be interesting territory.
So you picked up a little bit, all of you, on the process, and we saw from a number of voices in the documentary from across the aisle that they had issues with the current process. Based on a show of hands, who thinks that something in the process should change? All of you. So let's start out. I mean, Carter, you know, what would you change if you had the power to change the process?
I like the idea of second chances, but I think that to just blanketly allow everyone to vote all of a sudden, all at once, without looking at like recidivism, how many times they've done the same crime, just a blanket, you can have this right back. I think that's, it's too much.
And about any thoughts on the panel? You know, a lot of you mentioned this idea of Governor Scott.
I thought it was, I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was kind of funny because it seemed like a game show. Governor Scott's like, you know, Karen, you know, you've been doing really good with your life, but it's gonna be a no for me, dog. He's just like, that's gonna be a no for me, dog. It's like I saw Randy Jackson right there, and it just seemed kind of goofy. The panel, I don't know if I like the idea or not, but maybe more than 3 people. They seemed like overlords who just decide someone's fate.
Once you've lost your right to vote, you not only lose that right to vote, you lose the ability to find housing, you lose the ability to get a job.
I think until we can address a lot of the other problems that we have in society and, you know, try to correct them, like in our criminal justice and policing systems, we shouldn't take anyone's right away.
Reforming the process is not just this blanket yes or no on an amendment. It really takes a lot more of digging deep, and taking a look specifically at what are those crimes.
People that are committing crimes, the last thing they're thinking about doing is voting at that particular time. So as we talk about how to revamp this process, let's look at it in a different manner. The people who are fighting for their rights are people who have rehabilitated themselves and who now, with a clear head and a clear mind, now realize the importance of their vote.
Based on what you knew before and what you saw tonight, how will you be voting on Amendment 4?
I'll be voting yes.
I'm still unsure. I have to think about it a little bit more.
I would be voting no until they go ahead and change this blanket covered yes or no.
I'll be voting yes because I think our society and our government at the state, local, federal level have failed people.
I'm voting yes because I believe in second chances.
I'm a big believer in, you know, if your friends tell you to jump off a bridge, are you going to do it? And you need to be personally responsible. If you commit a crime which is heinous, I think that it's up to your own people then to forgive you. I don't think a blanket yes is the answer. So I think I'll be voting no on Amendment 4.
I want to thank our voters who joined us to share their thoughts and opinions on Amendment 4. It is critical as well to hear your voice on November 6th. For more information on this amendment and other issues and races on the ballot, visit WUFT.org. Thank you for watching.